How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. My name is Blake Holmes, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Isaiah Addair. Stick around with us, as today we're going to be talking about the recent action around the beginning of football season and the end of Major League Baseball's regular season. But again, I just wanted to go ahead and make an apology for missing last week's show due to some scheduling conflicts and a heavy workload. I unfortunately was not able to make it here on campus to do the show. And it is my fault again. I do apologize, but we are back, and we hope that we're going to be doing this again for the rest of the semester. Another thing before we start, I wanted to go ahead and say, if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, be sure to follow our social media pages. Our Twitter is at Radio Free Raddy, Instagram is Radio Free Radford, and Facebook is, as the same as our Instagram, Radio Free Radford. Follow those for updates about the station, different shows, and different great content on the social media pages. So, to start out, we'll start out like we usually do here in the fall semester of Hot Takes with Holmes. Talk about the National Football League. We're in week 3. Actually, we are in the tail end of week 3, going into week 4. We are going into week 3, tail end of week 2, and there have been some surprises so far this season. Whether it's up and down, like whether it's a team that's completely outperformed everybody that we did not expect to be up at the top, or some teams at the top that we really haven't seen much really improvement, or even just a little bit of a disappointment to the beginning of the season. So, Isaiah, give me a team that you are surprised in a great way and a terrible way.
A team I'm surprised of in a great way would probably be Tampa Bay. I know a lot of people would think Cleveland, tied and lost, 0-1-1 just because of 3 points. But I say Tampa Bay because I thought Cleveland was going to be decent already anyway. But with Tampa Bay not having Jameis, having Ryan Fitzpatrick, I just didn't expect it. Doug Martin's not there anymore. I expect them to fall flat on their faces. But Fitzpatrick has 9 touchdowns and almost 900 yards, I think, through 2 weeks. It's phenomenal.
I mean, for example, I agree with you on Tampa Bay. If you take a look at yesterday's game, 2 separate touchdown passes of 75 yards against it wasn't the Saints. Saints was week 1. It was, I can't remember off the top of my head, but 75-yard, one to Deshaun Jackson, Deshaun Jackson's just a speed demon. It's what he's been his entire career. And then the other one to O.J. Howard, the tight end. But I agree, Ryan Fitzpatrick, which we've seen him do this before. Not on this level, not this level of insanity, but really we've seen him do good numbers before, and it was against the Philadelphia Eagles. I apologize, but we've seen him do this. Remember the Bills days, the Ryan Fitzpatrick Bills days. Remember the Ryan Fitzpatrick Jets days. He'd have a great regular season up until the last game. He kind of falters a little bit, and his team ends up missing the playoffs, or he just doesn't perform as well in the big game. However, we haven't seen it on this level before, and that's something that's scary for the NFC South and for really the rest of the NFL, because who would have thought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be 2-0 right now and on top of the NFC South? Nobody. I mean, and they are alone at the top of the NFC South as well. Well, New Orleans is up there, but
they have 1 loss.
That's right, they do have 1 loss. So Tampa's on top of the NFC South, and they looked really good against the defending Super Bowl champions. So. And the other team, in my opinion, that's been a huge surprise early, maybe a little bit of a biased pick because they just destroyed my team, not by a score, but just by performance-wise, is the Kansas City Chiefs. I know they have a great receiving core. You don't need to tell me that. With Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Chris Conley, Travis Kelce, they have a great receiving core, and they're running back in Kareem Hunt. I just didn't think they were going to be a great team this year. I thought the Chargers were going to easily take the AFC West this year. I really didn't think that Kansas City, with losing Alex Smith, losing their game manager, was going to be that great. But here they are at 2-0, and Patrick Mahomes looks like the next Peyton Manning or Tom Brady with the way he's been playing so far. Again, that's a little bit of an overreaction. He's probably going to cool down at least a little bit this season. But no quarterback has ever thrown for more touchdowns in the first 2 games of an NFL season than Patrick Mahomes this year. I believe he's thrown 10 in 2 games, 4-6. That is absolute insanity, and he's the main reason why I think the Chiefs are 2-0.
I expect the Chiefs. I thought they'd be number 2 in the division behind the Chargers, maybe number 3 if the Raiders played well. But Mahomes is on pace for 80 touchdowns. The record's 55, so he's obviously got to slow down some. But I'm really disappointed in the Raiders and the Giants. The Giants have Barkley, who's played great, had 14 catches as a running back last night. And then OBJ, the defense has pieces. Their offensive line's horrendous. And the Raiders, you could probably say the same thing other than, like, their receiving core has been playing bad. Derek Carr hasn't been playing that bad, and their offensive line's really good. But they're not getting much help from receivers, which is why they re-signed Martavis Bryant, and their defense is definitely missing Khalil Mack.
I definitely also got to say a team that they've shown fight, but they're really going to have to pick it up, especially with the way the rest of the division is playing. Last year, you could say the AFC North was probably the worst division in football. No one was denying that. You had a 13-3 team on top, and then the next team, I believe, was like 10-6, and then it went down to a losing record. It top to bottom, it just wasn't. It was top heavy, and then it just wasn't great for the rest of the division. I believe that's changed a little bit this year, in that Cincinnati's played better than what we all expected. Cleveland's, I don't care if they are 0-1-1, they've definitely played like a much different and better football team than they have in the past years. It's the best start they've had since 2005, which is hilarious to me, but still, a much better start than we ever expected Cleveland to have. Baltimore looks great still, even though a little bit of a falter last week, but Baltimore still looks pretty good. And then Pittsburgh's just faltered. Pittsburgh doesn't look like the 13-3 team that came from last year. They are missing Le'Veon Bell, but James Conner has stepped up in a good role at that point. He's looked like a pretty promising young back, catching passes out of the backfield and working his way for rushing yards. However, I'm sorry, how many games do you really win? I know you take a look and you think, well, they get the bigger yards. How many games do you really win where your quarterback throws the ball 60 times and your offense runs the ball 8 times? It just doesn't happen that often. And we all know how old Big Ben's getting up in age. That's not doing anything good for him. That's not helping your chances at all. It's just going to make him more injury prone towards the end of the season. I don't necessarily agree with the coaching decisions so far, and the defense needs some work. But I do want to say that I think that the AFC North is considerably better than it was last year, especially compared, like I said, last year, it was definitely, you could tell which teams were really going to separate themselves. If you take a look at division records, Pittsburgh swept the division last year. This year, they're 0-1 against the division, and everyone just looks better. And also another team that I'm kind of disappointed in so far is the Chargers. I really thought the Chargers looked like they could be a 13-win team if they really wanted to. Philip Rivers was finally going to get that team that he has a shot at the Super Bowl, and it just underperformed a little bit this season. Gordon still looks okay. The receiving core, they should still be great with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but I don't know. I just don't think that LA has lived up to expectations so far.
I like Philip Rivers hasn't been playing bad. And what I noticed, I didn't watch the game, but I looked at the box score. Their main running back was Eckler, which is crazy, but I was shocked because hardly anybody, I never heard his name aside from Madden before this year. And Mike Williams had a phenomenal catch, his first career touchdown. I think it was in double coverage, got killed as he caught it. But I think that their flaw is going to be, aside from Casey Hayward and Joey Bosa, they don't really have a defense. They've lost, over the past few years, like 3 years, they've lost Eric Weddle and Trey Boston. And their defense is just falling apart. And their offensive line's always had issues as well. So,
speaking of spectacular catches, Keelan Cole from the Jacksonville Jaguars had an insane catch along the sideline. Blake Bortles led him to the inside a little bit more than maybe he would have hoped, but that's okay because he made a leaping Odell Beckham-like catch on the sideline, gets both feet in for probably about a 20-yard gain. Ridiculous athleticism coming out from the Jacksonville receiving corps. I thought Jacksonville looked pretty good. I thought they have looked pretty good so far. And Jacksonville looks like they could repeat as AFC South champions. I haven't been impressed with Tennessee. Really, I thought Tennessee may have a bounce back year. Or I should say have a better year than they did last year. I thought Houston would look better than they have so far. Granted, when one of the teams you play is the New England Patriots and Tom Brady in Foxborough, I can't really talk too much about it. So, actually, breaking news that has just been reported is next week we've seen Nick Foles be the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles through 2 weeks. The guy that we all know and love as the Tom Brady killer in the Super Bowl last year, the Philly special. He will not be starting next week as Carson Wentz will step back up and into the starter's role in the Week 3 matchup. So, what does this mean for Philadelphia? Obviously, we saw Wentz go down with the ACL injury last year, and Philadelphia was still able to rally around him and rally around all the around everything in their team and find their way to the Super Bowl, even with Nick Foles. And Nick Foles put together some masterful performances last year. So, what does this do essentially for Philadelphia? Are they going to be much better, or are they going to be about the same or maybe even worse with Wentz back in the starting role?
I like Nick Foles. I've always liked Foles. It's not been any secret. I will say, though, that, and he has a leadership quality that the team does rally around him, like you said, but Wentz is on a different level. If you see the way the team played, the team still played phenomenal with Foles. There's no taking away from that. But Wentz adds, a scrambling dynamic. He's got a stronger arm. I mean, you could probably make the case that he's a better passer, more poised. He doesn't just... Nick Foles does play it safe typically. He doesn't really throw many picks. But Wentz kind of weighs the risk and reward. He has more flashy throws, more phenomenal of a player. So I think that the team will more so rally around him just like they did early last year because they were on a roll when he got hurt.
Another thing that I like about Wentz more, as you said, I love Nick Foles. I didn't understand why everyone was hating on him as soon as Wentz went down, because this is a guy that went 27 touchdowns and 3 picks in a season. This is a guy that's thrown for 7 touchdowns in a game. This is a guy that was once a Pro Bowler. So I didn't understand the hate. He's the best backup in the league, and it's not even close. But Carson Wentz, to me, is a fantastic quarterback because he's athletic as well. That's another thing. He's a very underrated runner. As in, pocket breaks down. I mean, we all saw the highlight, I believe, against Washington. Pocket breaks down. He splits the middle, goes up, makes a man miss, and dives for about a 15-yard gain and a first down on a crucial third down. Carson Wentz is athletic. He's got a cannon of an arm. He can, as you said, Foles is conservative. He's not going to be the one that's going to bomb it down the field left and right. He's going to play more of a conservative approach. He's going to dink and dunk you for 5-yard gains at a time. Wentz, you always have to watch out for the deep threat, and with a guy like Mike Wallace on his team now, that's going to be huge. As in, last year his best deep threat was Alshon Jeffrey and maybe a Nelson Aguilar every once in a while, but really with Mike Wallace's main skill set is deep throws. I'm going to take my speed, I'm going to beat you deep, and really, that's what Carson Wentz likes to do. And I think that at the end of the day, when you give Carson Wentz a receiving core like you have, along with, as we've seen before, again, Nelson Aguilar's still there. He still has some of the pieces from last year. I think it could be, and Zach Ertz, I believe it still could be an interesting comeback for him.
And they have Darren Sproles as well, who I think it was a broken leg last year, really early in the season. And he's the master check down running back. I don't think we've ever seen a running back that's as good receiving check downs. That could honestly add another 30, 40 yards for Wentz a game just for having Sproles there and being able to utilize him like he does the running back in the passing game.
Another funny story, but respect at least a little bit to his career. Vontae Davis retiring at halftime between, I believe it was the Colts and the Bills. So I don't know what to think of this story. Vontae Davis has been a respectable defender in his 10 years. Obviously wasn't playing well against Indianapolis, and in his official statement he basically said, I was out there and I felt that my body was there's a point where my mind told myself that I should not be out here and that I was not playing well, and that he goes on, he talks about how he wants to be good for his family later on. He doesn't want to be what a lot of NFL players are scared of these days, and he felt at that point in time that it was the best decision for him to retire at halftime. A lot of jokes being said that's just a joke for saying I'm tired of playing for the Buffalo Bills because the Bills don't look good so far this year. But I gotta say, I think this is a funny story. It reminds me of a lot. I think it does. I think there is merit in what he's saying, at least a little bit. For example, the Kentucky Wildcats dropped off the Florida Gators at Florida and beat the Gators for the first time in 32 years last Saturday. And basically what it was, there was a Florida running back who was probably going to be transferring earlier before the game, and it was because he wasn't getting carries. He wanted to go to a different school. Well, as soon as that loss happened, he put out on Twitter that he was transferring. It wasn't directly because of the Kentucky game. There were other causes in front of it, but because he chose to do it at the time that he did, everyone just assumed it was because of the loss. This is a very similar thing, in my opinion. Vontae Davis is probably one he hasn't had a good start to the year. No one's saying he has. But he's probably been thinking about this for the past week, past little while, and then it hit him in the game, and that's when it's all about timing, in my opinion. I think that's what really puts it apart between both of these cases, and I think that Vontae, again, although a humorous story, I think there is merit in what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, Vontae Davis, just a few years ago, was one of the top corners in the league when he actually played for Indianapolis. And I think that kind of rubbed salt into the wound. He was playing against his old team that completely disrespected him and traded him, I think it was, after a career year. But I will say, like, losing to teams like that takes a lot out of you. Like, our junior year in high school, we went to Roller Tree High School, Southwest Virginia. We lost to Patrick Henry High School. The first time in, I think, the program history. It was like 40-some years. That was my junior year, the team I was on. I'll be honest, a lot of people on the team were talking about quitting then. Because, like you said, with the Florida, first time in 30-some years they lost to Kentucky. It takes a lot out of you. And it's just that confirmation, like, do I need to keep doing this? When that happens, you're like, no, I do not need to keep doing this. Because it's so, like, just tragic emotionally.
And keep in mind, when I say 32 years, it's not 32 years that they haven't won in Florida. Like, that's a little bit understandable in that Florida's got a great home field. Kentucky historically hasn't been a great football team. Winning in Florida is not easy. Not many teams do it regularly. But that's 32 years straight. Tennessee fans got flack for losing for 11 years straight. Kentucky lost for 32. That's 3 decades of losing to Florida. Finally, they knocked them off, and that's great for Big Blue Nation. But like I said, as you said, it just takes the air out of you to go on such a huge losing streak and to finally break it. It's pure joy and exhilaration for one side, and then it's heartbreak on the other side. And like I said, but at the end of the day and in the bigger picture, it really requires thinking about the timing of what you want to announce things. If Vontae Davis waited until after the game, people might understand a little bit more, but it's because he retired at halftime that everyone's making jokes about it. They think it's funny. And maybe that is why Vontae Davis retired. We'll never know. We won't know. We only know what Vontae Davis said publicly, and that's what he did say. Oh, Cleveland. They, as we've said, the lovable losers of the NFL. I can't say all losers, though. 0-1-1 this year. And as you said earlier, that's about 3 points total. So, what does Cleveland have to do? They've looked like so much better of a team. They've played 2 of the top teams from last year, Pittsburgh and then New Orleans, which Pittsburgh looks a little bit rough at the beginning of this year, but New Orleans still looked great. And what do they have to do at this point to get a win? And when do you think they'll get their first win? Because the upcoming game that they do have this week is New York at Cleveland, a little bit of a weaker team on a Thursday night. But Thursday night football, we never know what can happen. And also, do you think they are okay with Tyrod staying in the driver's seat? Or is it maybe going to be a Baker Mayfield time towards the end of the season?
To get their first win this Thursday, 3 things need to happen. Keep Tyrod. It's going to answer those questions you just asked to. Keep Tyrod, because he's conservative. Baker, first start, could throw a few picks. We don't know. I like the guy, but you never know. 2, do not trade Josh Gordon. don't trade him. Just giving another team ammunition that you may face further down the road. And he's a playmaker. Last full season he played, didn't even play the full season, played 14 games, 1,600 yards. Don't trade Josh Gordon. 3, let Zane Gonzalez walk and sign Dan Bailey, just like we talked about before the show. 3 total points. There's been, I think, 2 field goals and 2 extra points maybe that have been missed during that time. That's like an 8-point swing. And they've lost. They could be 2-0 right now, easily. So those are the 3. In the game against Pittsburgh where they tied, Josh Gordon had a crucial touchdown there. And Tyrod's he's not been turning the ball over. And that's what Cleveland needs. With their stout defense, good weapons on offense, don't turn the ball over.
And that's actually what I was going to say. Josh Gordon in the Week 1 game makes an insane athletic catch. I mean, great coverage too, but it was just the pure athleticism and the perfect ball placement of Tyrod Taylor. He beats Cameron Sutton in the end zone, and really it was the key driving point to keep that game level and not fall farther back to Pittsburgh. So I agree, Josh Gordon's a freak of an athlete. He's a great receiver. And I think that Cleveland would be making a mistake by trading him. And also, as you said, field goal kicking means a lot in the NFL. I think it's an underrated thing. People don't necessarily think about it as much. They say, well, that missed field goal didn't mean anything. Well, if it's a 3-point game or if it was a 7-point game, that could be a momentum swing. That could be whatever it may be. And we all know football is a game of inches and football is a game of momentum. So you're telling me if a team, let's say a team is up by 7 and they're about to kick a field goal to ice it with 50 seconds to go and they're at the 30-yard line and they miss it. That gives the other team the ball with the momentum of you just missed the field goal and we still have plenty of time. They drive down the field and score, and you lose. It doesn't necessarily mean just the point difference. And plus, they make the field goal, that's a 2-possession game, and you've pretty much won. You make the field goal, the momentum's on your side. No, you missed it, and both go against you. So in that sense, field goal kicking means a ton. And Cleveland's special teams so far has been lackluster at best. And as you said, and it's not just Dan Bailey, there are several other talented kickers they could go get. I do believe that Bailey is the most popular choice right now, though, and I think that it would be a great choice for Cleveland. I think Dallas made the wrong mistake letting him walk this year. They went young. They tried to maybe save a little bit of cap and go young. But Cleveland, what Dallas's loss could be Cleveland's gain, and Cleveland needs to do that and let Gonzalez walk, in my opinion. So, on to our favorite part of the show is the week-by-week predictions that we have for Week 3. We won't be predicting Monday night this week, Week 2, because it wouldn't feel right to us since we didn't do the rest of the games this week. So, we're going to start with the Thursday night game, New York at Cleveland. Again, Cleveland looks pretty good so far. They really have. They've shocked me being looked as well as they have. I definitely think that if they could figure it out and get to winning football games, then they could still be a scary team in the AFC. But I'm keeping the same philosophy I've had. I haven't taken a loss from it yet. I will happily take a loss from it if it happens this week. I am not picking the Cleveland Browns until they win a game and prove to me that they deserve my pick. In this case, I think Darnold has looked up and down. I really think he has. They destroyed the Lions Week 1. And really, I'm going with New York for this game. Because the reason, I don't care if it's home field. Cleveland wins this game, I might consider picking them for the rest of the season. In fact, I will. But I'm not picking Cleveland until they force me to pick them.
Me. I like Sam Darnold. Didn't like him last year, but he's proven me wrong with their preseason the first 2 weeks. In my eyes, anyway. I love Todd Bowles, the Jets head coach. I love their offensive weapons. But I'm the complete opposite of Blake. I pick the Browns until I see that they can't hang with the big dogs. And the Jets are far from a big dog, so I'm picking the Browns. I will say that if Denzel Ward made life hard on Ben Roethlisberger, he can make it hard on everybody in the league, probably with the exception of Rodgers and Brady. Maybe even them. We'll see. But 2 picks against Big Ben, he could get 2 picks against Robbie Anderson and Sam Darnold as well. On top of that, Cleveland's looked good. They have the ability to stop Isaiah Crowell and Balil Powell. And aside from Robbie Anderson, there's not a whole lot of weapons that the Jets have when it comes to receiving, catching the ball. So I'm going Cleveland, and I mean, there's not really much else to say. I'm going Cleveland. I believe it in my heart.
Up next, we have on Sunday. We're out of Thursday night games. We all know Thursday night football, anything can happen as well. On Sunday, we have an NFC South matchup, crucial NFC South matchup. We've seen 3 of them so far, two crucial NFC South matchups so far. New Orleans traveling to Atlanta. This is a game of where I thought 2 of the powerhouses of the NFC South would be a huge game. Never that I thought that the team that I was leaving out in those 3 would be on top of the division right now. That being said, I know they beat Carolina last week. Atlanta did. And I know that Matt Ryan still has Julio Jones. They still have Calvin Ridley. They still have Mohamed Sanu. The receiving core they do. The running backs they have. Devontae Freeman was out last week, but he should be coming back this week. But New Orleans right now, and plus Atlanta's they haven't looked like the team that I expected them to. Really just a bad game week 1 against Philadelphia and a bounce back game against Carolina. But I think New Orleans winning the hard fought game with Cleveland comes out, and Drew Brees has a field day in Atlanta. Kamara gets some catches, and that's one thing I love about Kamara. Is Kamara's not one that he's not gonna get 100 yards rushing per game. It's gonna be a combined total of a good amount because he does so much in that Saints offense that I think New Orleans gets by Atlanta without Mark Ingram.
I'd have to agree with you. Breeze, Kamara, Michael Thomas is on pace for over 200 catches this year and 2,151 yards. Will he keep that up? No, like Mahomes, he won't keep the pace up. But he could shatter all the receiving records this year with completely possible. And on pace for 24 touchdowns, I believe. And I don't think it's going to be easy by any means to contain that. I think they still have Ted Ginn as well, and they have Shane Vereen in the backfield and Mike Gillislee. Oh, never mind, not Vereen, but Mike Gillislee is there, as well as Kamara. The defense is not good, but I mean Atlanta's defense isn't great. I mean Keanu Neal, one of their best defensive backs, is out of the game anyway. Out for a while. So, I'm going New Orleans because Drew Brees and Kamara, you can't count them out.
San Francisco going east for them, but still in the Midwest, to Kansas City. Kansas City, as I said, looks great so far, but in my opinion, Mahomes is going to be going up against his best corner matchup yet in Richard Sherman with San Francisco. That being said, San Francisco's defense isn't fantastic by all means. Garoppolo still looks fine, but I think Kansas City wins. Even because it's been a point. Kareem Hunt hasn't been that involved so far, unless it's catching a pass out of the backfield. And really, I think that even if you find out, San Fran's going to watch their game film and they're going to study what's happened so far this season, and they're going to be ready for the pass. They may be ready for the pass, but Kareem Hunt, this could be a breakout game for him in that it's in Arrowhead. It's never easy to win an Arrowhead. And really, it's going to be a point to where Kareem Hunt is going to go ahead and he may rush for over 100 yards in this game, I think. Mahomes still plays well, I think, against that Niners defense, but give me Kansas City at home.
I've got to agree. I think Hunt will probably have over 150 total yards, passing, receiving, everything, or rushing, not passing. You can't stop Mahomes. I honestly don't believe you can unless you have maybe the Rams defense. Jimmy Garoppolo's okay, but I just haven't seen anything to make me pick against the Chiefs.
I was laughing with my friend last night. I said, it looks like Kansas City, if they wanted to, could have a Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl offense style in that Mahomes drops back and he throws it as far as he possibly can and just hopes Tyreek Hill goes and gets it. That's what the Ravens did. Flacco would throw it 60 yards, but Jacoby Jones or Torrey Smith would come down with it. And that's really what I said that Kansas City could do. Oakland going to Miami, going across the country all the way to the Dolphins. And I think the Dolphins have looked better than we really expected them to this year. 2-0. Kenyon Drake, I still think, is one of my favorite underrated running backs in the AFC. Tannehill looks pretty good. And call me a believer, but I'm going on the wave of the Dolphins in this game because Oakland's got to go all the way across the country. That's not an easy thing to do. I don't care who it is, unless you are literally the best team in the league going to the worst team in the league, but you're going from, let's say, Pennsylvania to California. I really don't think that matters. I really think that matters a ton, and I like Miami at home in this game.
I love Ryan Tannehill. I've liked him since he was in college. I like Devontae Parker, Balaj, Frank Gore, Kenyon Drake. And I like the Dolphins' defense a decent amount. But I will say that, I don't know, the Raiders aren't going to stay winless, especially with John Gruden. Derek Carr's got to be hungry. Martavis Bryant, another week in the system. I think Bryant has a big game. Marshawn Lynch comes out of hiding and actually just explodes into the scene this week. And I think the Raiders secure the win across country.
Buffalo going to Minnesota. I don't need to talk about this much. I don't think Buffalo is good this year. I like the Vikings, especially after Kirk Cousins' insane performance against Green Bay.
Buffalo may go 0-16. That's all I'm going to say.
Indianapolis traveling to Philadelphia. Similar thing. I think Indy's better than they were last year. When you get your franchise quarterback back, it is definitely a morale boost. But going to Philadelphia, I know they lost last week to Tampa Bay, but that's gonna make them strive to be a better team, especially at home. And I think this honestly could get a little ugly for Indianapolis and their lackluster defense, in my opinion.
So getting your franchise quarterback back is a big deal, and that's what Philadelphia is doing. They're also getting their quarterback back. And Wentz is hungry. He's got to prove to the city of Philadelphia and to fans all across the United States and the world that the Super Bowl that season and the Super Bowl is not a fluke, that he did have a hand in it, and he's going to do it by destroying Indianapolis.
Green Bay going to Washington. Green Bay, again, the team with Minnesota that tied last week. 2 ties so far in 2 weeks. And traveling to Washington, Washington looked pretty good in the first week. And then the second week, they struggled. They really did. So I think, and Rodgers is still hurt. He is. Still got that knee injury. But I like the way he's playing right now. I like the way Devontae Adams is playing right now. Ty Montgomery. Give me Green Bay in this game on the road at Washington.
In week 1 against Washington, the Cardinals put up their only touchdown at the end of the game. Fitzgerald had 60 yards in 1 quarter. And Devontae Adams is a lot faster and a lot younger. Not as good as Fitzgerald in my biased opinion, and probably most people's opinion. But if you do that in 1 quarter, I think Adams, with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, is going to make life really hard for Josh Norman and the Redskins. Give me Green Bay.
Cincinnati going to Carolina. Cincinnati looks better than they have in the past. Their offensive line's still not good. Really, it isn't. But Dalton's been able to get the ball out fast enough and get it to his playmakers and Tyler Eifert, A.J. Green. That being said, Carolina's coming off of a hard-fought game in Atlanta last week. They get to come home against Cincinnati. I think Carolina wins by more than a touchdown this game. Cam Newton goes off after that malicious hit that was on him last week. I think that Carolina makes a statement in this game and gets a bigger win against the Bengals.
2 words, Newton, McCaffrey. Both are going to have big games. Don't really buy into Carolina's receiving core or their defense too much, aside from a couple of star players. But Joe Mixon's hurt, and he's been one of the centerpieces of Cincinnati's offense. So, give me Newton and McCaffrey with Carolina.
Tennessee traveling to Jacksonville. Jacksonville's played like a great team at home. They have past 2 seasons, and the defense is still great with Ramsey and Boye. Ramsey's just making headlines left and right for the comments he's making in the media, but Bortles is looking more confident in week 3. He looked more confident week 2. You still have Fournette didn't play last week, but he should be back this week. Keelan Cole still looks great. I think Jacksonville rolls in this game.
Give me Jacksonville as well. Like you said, they didn't have Fournette, but they still took down New England by, I think, 11 points or so last week. And you can do that with your backup, with Blake Bortles at quarterback. Plus, the receiving core is stepping up, even after losing Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson. Give me Jacksonville.
Not to mention, I really think that Mariota's not looked great at the beginning of this season compared to what he has in the past. Again, there is an injury. He has been not 100%. But overall, I think that Tennessee hasn't looked as great. I thought Derrick Henry would look better than he has so far, and there's still time. It's just 2 games. We've seen teams come back from down like 0-4 before, but we've seen this happen before. But I think Jacksonville it shows they really are on top of the AFC South in this game.
Well, Tennessee actually did win. They did beat the Texans by, I think it might have been a field goal, but Blaine Gabbert did start. If Blaine Gabbert does start, I don't think there's much of a question. If Mariota does it, there's a chance, but with Gabbert, don't get me wrong, I like Gabbert personally as a player and as a person, but against that defense, there's not much you can do.
Denver traveling to Baltimore. I will say this. The Broncos have been a much better team than I expected them to be this year. I know they got Case Keenum, and that was mainly that was the main driving point of, well, this team's going to be better, and they have been. But I really didn't expect them to. I believe they're either 1-1 or 2-0. I believe they're 2-0. So I didn't expect this to be a 2-0 team at first, to be completely honest. I think that ends here, though. Traveling to Baltimore. Baltimore plays like an entirely different team at home. They look like one of the best teams at home. It seems like I would know. My team plays them once a year at home. So I like Baltimore in this game. I think Flacco furthers the point that he's the starting quarterback right now and not Lamar Jackson. Continues to play well in this game. And I think Willie Snead has a touchdown catch or 2 in this game, and they beat the Broncos, even on Chris Harris Jr.
Also give me Baltimore. 3 new receiver acquisitions, and all 3 of them have been playing stellar to this point. Just 2 weeks in, I know, but bold prediction, I think Lamar Jackson does score his first career touchdown, probably on the ground. And I think they roll. I think they roll over the 2-0 Broncos. Von Miller may make life hard for at least the first half, but I look for Baltimore to make enough plays to win.
The Giants traveling to Houston. Both teams 1-1, I believe, right now. No, Houston's 0-2. I do think that the Giants have looked good so far. They lost the Cowboys last night, but really, I think Houston's due for a game at this point. I think Watson finally puts the pieces together. J.J. Watt finally gets the defense together. And that defense, there's so many playmakers in that team. There's too many playmakers, in my opinion, to be 0-2 at this point. You still have guys, as I said, like Deshaun Watson, Lamar Miller out of the backfield, DeAndre Hopkins, who, in my opinion, is a top 3 receiver in the league. On the defensive side of the ball, you still have J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, Tyrann Mathieu. There's so many different playmakers and pieces on that team to be 0-2, and I think they finally get over the hump. It's going to be a close game. This is going to be a game. I think it's going to be a shootout as well, but give me Houston by a field goal at home.
I don't even know if it's going to be too close. I think Houston, like you said, they have too many playmakers. Watson's come back from a torn ACL. This will be his 3rd game back. I think he'll be just like he was last year. The defense has to step up with Matthew, Clowney, Watt, and I think they will. Give me Houston.
In a game that no one knows who the home team is, Los Angeles versus Los Angeles. The Chargers against the Rams. Obviously, it's going to be played in the same stadium, but I really think that it's technically saying that the Rams have a home game in this sense, which really, as I said, it's a home game for both. You're used to playing in this stadium. So, Chargers at the Rams. I like the Rams. I think the Rams are, on paper, one of the best teams in the NFL, and I think Jared Goff, as we've said, with the Chargers depleted and not great secondary, goes off in this game, throws for over 350 yards, and the Rams do just enough to get over the Chargers, even though I still think the Chargers could be a great team in the AFC West.
I have to agree with you. The Rams did just beat my team 34-0, and it's not saying a lot because my team has been anemic this year offensively. But I was going over with one of our roommates. The Rams have a Pro Bowl or All-Pro player at almost every single position on the field, and or at least every level. Like secondary, linebackers, linemen, at least every level, there's at least like one All-Pro. And it's going to be hard for any team to overcome that this year. And I don't think the Chargers are at the point where they can do that right now.
It's almost at the point that I almost want to say they're on par or greater than the greatest show on turf. That's saying something too. Chicago going to Arizona. Arizona looked lackluster. So is Chicago, though. Neither team has looked great so far at the beginning of the season. It being at Arizona, which you said Arizona's offense hasn't looked good really at all. And Chicago, I think that really this game is going to be won on the ground, in my opinion. And I think that Chicago has the better back. I think Chicago has a very great backfield, in fact. Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen back there. So, in my opinion, it's going to be a low-scoring game, but give me Chicago purely because of the edge in the running game.
Steve Wilkes said there's going to be differences. No starter's job is safe. I say there's at least 4, Chandler Jones, Patrick Peterson, Fitzgerald, and David Johnson. But there's still a lot of positions up for grabs. I think Bradford will start, but Rosen will eventually take over. But like you said, it's going to be mostly be done on the ground. And if Bradford does throw the ball, it's not good. It's not going to be good for Arizona. Khalil Mack will wreak havoc, and I say I give it to Chicago. David Johnson will have a good game, I do believe, but going Chicago.
Dallas traveling to Seattle. Seattle's always a tough environment to play in. Century Lake Field, the 12th man, but Seattle hasn't looked good so far. In my opinion, I don't think they're going to be that great this year. Russell Wilson's still a good quarterback, in my opinion. He still has Doug Baldwin, still has weapons around him. But I think Dallas, getting their first win of the season, they go on a little bit of a roll, and they travel to Seattle and get a win in Seattle with, with the legs of Ezekiel Elliott carrying him. He looked great last night, and I think Dak finally put some pieces together and puts together a decent game as well against the Seahawks.
Give me the Seahawks. I like Elliott. I like Dak. They haven't been that great of a team. And we all know that 101, their offense has looked not as good as they should. Their defense has not been good. Russell Wilson has to break out. Russell Wilson has to do something to get his team back in line. And I still think he's probably a top 5 quarterback in the league, as much as a lot of people would disagree now after the last few weeks. You still have Earl Thomas has been playing his head off. Russell Wilson is going to make magic happen. And Russell Wilson is going to lead the Seahawks to a win.
Up next, we have the New England Patriots going to Detroit. Detroit looked better last week, or this week, I should say, and Stafford threw for 3 touchdown passes, but they're 0-2. Their team has not looked good. New England has Tom Brady. That's all I have to say. Give me New England in Detroit.
Yeah, New England, they did lose last week to Jacksonville, but you can't really count out Brady. I do think they've actually been connected to Josh Gordon, so if he gets traded, they might have a new weapon for Brady that might be his best since Randy Moss. Especially if that happens, give me New England, hands down.
And the game that a lot of people are waiting for on Monday night, but not maybe in the sense that we expected it, as we've said several times throughout the broadcast, Pittsburgh going to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay looks great so far. Not even going to deny that. Fitzpatrick looks great. Also, Pittsburgh's secondary is porous. It has been. Joe Hayden's been out with a hamstring injury since week 1 against Cleveland. Artie Burns was out last week, and it really showed. Patrick Mahomes picked apart the secondary, again, threw for 6 touchdowns, and Pittsburgh's defense just looked helpless on the field against Kansas City. With that being said, in my opinion, the main testament of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the past, however long it's been, is they always play down to lower competition, and they play up to better competition. Tampa Bay's sitting here at 2-0. We didn't expect them to be 2-0, but Pittsburgh's going to watch this, and it seems to be a testament to them that they always seem to play better against the best teams unless that team is New England. But really, and even then, they still stay competitive with New England. So Pittsburgh having that on their shoulder and having the weight of 2 losses like this on their shoulder, I think they go into Tampa and win a hard-fought, close game, and Antonio Brown breaks out in this game.
I do think Antonio Brown will break out because I was just notified that someone called him a system receiver on Twitter, and he said, "Trade me, let's find out." Not really requesting a trade, but pretty much saying, daring people to trade him so he can prove his worth. And so I think he will break out. I think James Conner will. If Le'Veon returns, it's going to be a nightmare for Tampa's defense. But I think it'll be a shootout. You have Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson with a quarterback that can actually get them the ball and Ryan Fitzpatrick. It'll be a shootout, and I'm actually going to go Tampa.
And that's going to be, as I said, a close, hard-fought game, and really could go a coin flip at either point this way. Moving on from the NFL, I do want to talk about some NCAA football while we can. It really, and my co-host Isaiah Addair will be leaving again for class today. Again, unfortunately, he will not be able to stick around for the NCAA segment, but don't worry, I'm still going to be here for a little bit, and we're going to be talking about NCAA football and the MLB, so don't click out of the browser. So, Week 3 in FBS was an interesting week. I thought that several big games coming out this week. Alabama just outclassing Ole Miss. Still looks like they're the number 1 team in the nation. It's not even close, in my opinion. Ohio State edged TCU in a very close game to the very end. Ohio State pulls away towards the end. TCU looked like they were finally going to get some revenge, but they weren't quite able to get that for them. Oklahoma having a closer game than they may have liked against Iowa State. Iowa State put up a great fight in them. I think Iowa State has been an underrated team in the Big 12. That being said, Oklahoma did win at Iowa State by 10, 37-27. Another powerhouse game was LSU and Auburn, the number 12 versus the number 12 at the number 7 team in the nation. And LSU got it done with a 1-point win over the Tigers in Jordan-Hare. Also, upset Wisconsin, number 6 team in the nation, the team that went almost undefeated last year, aside from the Big Ten championship, got beat by BYU in Wisconsin. Big game there for the Cougars and big loss there for the Badgers. Vanderbilt almost knocked off Notre Dame as well in Notre Dame in South Bend, but they weren't quite able to do it. Notre Dame takes the win 22-17. And lastly, really more than anything, there was another upset as well. Another, again, local teams too. Virginia Tech rolled. Tennessee won. West Virginia did get the dub as well. And it was really just an overall expected week in the NCAA, aside from more so than anything the Wisconsin game. But Georgia rolled. Clemson won huge over Georgia Southern. And really the rankings, the only things that should change, Auburn will drop. They won't drop out of the top 25 by all means. Same thing with Wisconsin. But we definitely we should see a little bit of movement coming up in the upcoming week. But with week 4, we did see Central Florida is ranked for the first time this season. Past week, after having a perfect season, they're still perfect. They are still undefeated so far. And talking over some of the predictions this week, we do have Penn State going to Illinois. I think Penn State takes care of this game easily. It's on a Friday night. And I think that really Penn State, there's really not much of an upset alert to me, even with it being in Illinois. Penn State gets the win here. And also on a Friday night, Florida Atlantic coming to UCF. Florida Atlantic, led by Lane Kiffin, is always an interesting team to look out for, but UCF gets it done at Central Florida. ACC East matchup, Georgia traveling to Mizzou. Mizzou is an interesting team with Drew Lock. They look like their passing offense is going to be the main point. That's what the idea is in Missouri right now. But Georgia just looks unstoppable. They look like a great team. They look like they were in the national championship last year. So give me Georgia. I think Jake Fromm has a field day. And it's going to be a quarterback battle, but Jake Fromm has a field day on Missouri's lackluster defense. Notre Dame traveling to Wake Forest. Wake Forest is a sneakily good team. They were last year, and I think they are this year as well. Notre Dame looks pretty good so far, but okay. I like to pick an upset a week. Give me this one for my upset alert. game of the week because I think Notre Dame going to Wake Forest, going down to Winston-Salem, that's going to be harder than people may think it may be. And I think, like I said, I think Wake is a sneakily good team. And a 12 o'clock game, give me Wake Forest in this game. Nebraska traveling to Michigan. Nebraska's looked really not that great this year. And Michigan, even though Michigan still looks average so far in my opinion, give me Nebraska in this game. Or excuse me, give me Michigan in this game. Boston College ranked number 23 right now, going to Purdue. I think Purdue is not good. Just to lay that simply, it is in Purdue, but give me Boston College, and they continue to stay ranked through the next week. Up next, SEC West matchup. This is always one that I'm interested in. It hasn't been close the past few years, but we've seen them play well and play competitively against them in the past. Texas A&M traveling to Tuscaloosa. Tua Tagovailoa looks like a fantastic quarterback so far for the Crimson Tide. Texas A&M looks pretty good so far as well. But it being in Tuscaloosa, Alabama looks. I saw a tweet yesterday that said it's Alabama's world and we're just living in it. And I think that remains true. I think that Alabama has no problem with A&M and they roll by more than 2 touchdowns, in my opinion. ACC matchup, Clemson to Georgia Tech. I don't know how to pick this one because Georgia Tech's always a weird football team. They could go out and they could beat the top team because of that triple option defense, or excuse me, the triple option offense, or they could get beat by 3 touchdowns. I'm going to say the latter in this game. Even though it's in Atlanta, in Georgia Tech, Clemson looks good so far. They haven't had a real test yet. This could be their first test. And Clemson's always having the one team the year that they seem to have trouble with. This could be that game, but I like Clemson in this game as well. Kansas State at West Virginia. Big 12 matchup. I think Will Grier is the Heisman frontrunner at this point. The only other people that I can think that you would ever even consider putting near him right now are Tua Tagovailoa, as I said, and Kyler Murray from Oklahoma. But West Virginia has no problem with the Wildcats in this game, and they roll in Morgantown. Weird game here. Virginia Tech, number 13 Virginia Tech, traveling to Old Dominion. I can't say that I really thought that Old Dominion was the level of team that would come to Virginia Tech. That being said, Tech wins by 3 touchdowns. Florida International traveling to Miami. Miami wins in Miami. That's not much of an issue for me. I don't have a really regret picking that. TCU at Texas. TCU coming off of that heartbreaking loss to Ohio State last week. I think they make a statement. Plus, I don't think Texas is good this year. Texas has always been overrated, in my opinion, by the AP polls. And TCU blows out Texas, I believe, honestly, in Austin. Up next, we have Mississippi State at Kentucky. Kentucky 2-0 off of an exhilarating start, beating Florida for the first time in 32 years. And Mississippi State comes to town with Nick Fitzgerald. Call me a believer, but in Lexington, give me the Wildcats. I think they're on a roll right now, coming off of that big win against Florida. I think Florida's a little bit lesser of a team than people may want to give them credit this year, but I like Kentucky in this game. A night game, historic rivalry game. Florida at Tennessee. Both teams 2-1 right now. Both teams losing the one real test they've had, with Tennessee losing to West Virginia and Florida losing to Kentucky. But here's the difference maker. Florida lost last week at home against Kentucky. Tennessee lost their game against West Virginia week 1 in a neutral site game. It wasn't close, but that matters. Tennessee's coming off of 2 straight wins. They're confident. Florida's coming off of that loss against Kentucky. The skill level difference leads me to believe that it could be a little bit of an even game because of that. Give me the Volunteers in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's the only reason I say Tennessee this week. They have a gauntlet of an SEC schedule coming up, but give me the Volunteers over the Gators in Knoxville and no other reason. Arkansas traveling to Auburn. Auburn bounces back from that game against LSU, and they get the win in Jordan Hare. Michigan State at Indiana. Michigan State losing in the first part of the season to Arizona State, a game that I said could be close. Give me Michigan State in this game, though. Stanford going to Oregon. Both teams ranked. This could be a pivotal matchup in the Pac-12. I think Bryce Love has a field day in this game. He runs for over 150 yards, and the Cardinal knock off the Ducks. Lastly, or excuse me, not quite lastly, number 18, Wisconsin going to Iowa. Iowa has one of the most captivating traditions in football, the wave to the children's hospital. It's one that it melts everybody's heart, and we all feel great inside when we watch it. That being said, I think Wisconsin bounces back from the game against BYU, and they get it done in Iowa City. Lastly, Arizona State at Washington. Washington's looked decent so far to start the season, in my opinion. It's in Seattle. Arizona State's been a little bit of an underrated team. They knocked off Michigan State earlier this year. But that being said, as much as I think Arizona State could put up a bigger fight than a lot of people want to give them credit, give me Washington in Seattle. Moving on from NCAA, I want to quickly just discuss MLB, the Major League Baseball. And really, I want to talk about my MVP predictions, and really, in the NL, in my opinion, it's up in the air. There's been so many great contributors and playmakers so far. It's a biased pick. I like Ronald Acuna so far, but this isn't the most valuable player of the second half of the season. It's for the entire season. So taking that into effect, really my pick for the NL MVP right now is either Trevor Story of the Colorado Rockies or Javi Baez for the Chicago Cubs. Both have been great. I get the edge to Story right now, or Arenado from the Rockies, purely because they're making this late season push for the AL West, the NL West. So I give the edge to them, but I definitely think that both of those options have been great so far. They've had stellar seasons. They're both looking to make the playoffs this year. Chicago running away with the NL Central, but the NL West, I definitely think that it's still up in the air. And that's my two NL picks. Now for the AL, I really don't think it's anybody else than someone that's on the Red Sox. And if you're going to do that, I think it's going to be Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts has been the emotional leader of this team. He's been a stellar baseball player, one that a lot of people expected to be good the minute he stepped up to the plate in the major leagues. And I definitely think he's lived up to the expectations. Boston clinching a playoff spot, winning over 100 games. And I think Mookie takes home the MVP this year for the American League. So, just a quick run through of the MLB standings. A lot of close division races so far in the American League. On the American League East, of course, Boston on top, up 11.5 games on the 91 game winning New York Yankees. Insanity. New York would be on top of so many other divisions in Major League Baseball, but instead they're down 11.5 games in their own division. Cleveland clinching a playoff spot, up 15 games on the Twins. Not much talk about there in the AL Central. Acquiring Josh Donaldson, he looks pretty good so far for Cleveland. The AL West, Houston separating themselves. Oakland was threatening for the AL West lead, actually taking the lead from Houston, but they've really separated themselves. They're up 4.5 games now. The Astros are taking the American League right now. The American League West, that is. So, and the wild card as well for the American League, it is still the Yankees and the A's. That's probably not going to change. The A's are threatening the Yankees for the top wild card spot, but it's really going to come down to those teams for the wild card. In the NL East, the Atlanta Braves taking a 6.5 game lead against the Phillies. That's no means safe though. Washington not far behind the Phillies, and the Phillies have to play Atlanta, I believe it's like 8 games still for the rest of this season. So huge swings coming up, and that could be a very close race towards the end of the year. The NL Central, Chicago up 2.5 games on the Brewers, and then 5.5 games on the Cardinals. That's one of the toughest divisions in baseball right there. Cubs look great so far, Brewers look good, and the Cardinals have looked good so far as well. And the closest division race, the Colorado Rockies having a half game on the Los Angeles Dodgers right now. Arizona's stumbled a little bit. They're falling behind. Colorado looks great. really think they look fantastic so far, and I think that Colorado, honestly, is my pick to win the NL West, but it's definitely going to be a closer game, a closer race than people are giving them credit. It's also probably for a playoff spot because 3 teams in the NL Central will probably make the playoffs this year, with the Brewers and the Cardinals leading the wild card spot. So that's going to do it here on Hot Takes with Holmes from Radio Free Radford. If you did like what you heard, be sure to follow our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Both are Hot Takes with Holmes. We're also on Twitter at Radio Free Ratty. So be sure to follow our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. We upload the broadcast every week to our YouTube channel. Post updates on our Facebook channel, our Facebook page. Be sure to like those. Also follow us on Twitter, Hot Takes with Holmes. Also, again, if at any point you love what you hear, you want to let Tristan and everybody here at Radio Free Radford how to make us better, or certain suggestions, or just say how much you like the shows, follow our social media pages. We're really happy to have you. Our Instagram is Radio Free Radford, Facebook Radio Free Radford as well, and our Twitter is at Radio Free Ratty. Be sure to follow us, like, comment, subscribe on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter pages, and we'd love to hear from you. For my co-host Isaiah Addair, I'm Blake Holmes, and we look forward to yet another fantastic semester again here on Radio Free Radford.